The year? 2006. The world does not yet know of an MCU. The biggest superhero movies are the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, due to get a third film in the following year. We've had Batman Begins, we've had the Fantastic Four, we've had X-Men movies, and we've had Daredevil. Comic book shenanigans are in full flow, but it definitely ain't mainstream yet. Along comes a little game called Marvel Ultimate Alliance, a follow-on from the X-Men Legends game, but with a roster that as a comic book fan as a kid, you would never believe. It would be years later that Rocksteady Studios would come in and redefine what it meant to be a superhero video game, and lay the foundation for Insomniac, Eidos Montreal and WB to follow all these years later. But Marvel Ultimate Alliance is an absolute gem of a video game. Today, I want to remember this game. You know why? Two big reasons. Number one, we are fresh off the back of X-Men 97, some of the greatest Marvel content to exist, period. So I had that X-Men itch, and there's a real lack of playable X-Men games around right now. Number two, at the time of this video recording, we are a week away from Microsoft's June showcase, who now have Activision, the people who published this Ultimate Alliance game, 1 and 2. Thing is, Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2 are not purchasable digitally, alongside X-Men Legends, Origins Wolverine, or a whole host of comic book video games. So, could we see them be revived, remastered, or just straight up available on Game Pass, or just available for purchase again? I bloody hope so. Because Ultimate Alliance is a superhero fever dream, because it just asks the question, how many heroes do you want? And the answer? A lot of them. I hold really special memories of Ultimate Alliance, to be honest with you. See, growing up for me, I was comic book conditioned on 3 of the best to ever exist. Spider-Man animated series of the 90s, the Batman animated series, and Justice League / Justice League Unlimited. Meaning naturally, aside from Spidey, I was pretty DC orientated as a kid growing up. So, I boot up Ultimate Alliance, and you start with the basics, Cap, Thor, Spidey, Wolverine. I know these boys, but then you get to that shield save point for the very first time, and you get the opportunity to change team. I just remember scrolling through and seeing Iceman and being like, whoa, he's like the coolest guy ever, man. No pun intended at the time. Then seeing Deadpool and like, what? He's got guns and a sword? I need more of this guy. And I have that story for like 5 or 6 characters in this game as a kid. But this game was like my first real foray into the wider Marvel universe. I think one of my fondest memories is you can unlock certain characters in this game by doing certain things. So Daredevil, you have to collect Daredevil action figures, same with Black Panther. But there's this one mission in Murder World where there's a bunch of mini games that you have to do and go around. But there's this side one which is a claw game. You do it, and then Blade pops out. I just lost my mind, because replaying this, I completely forgot about that. And even 18 years later, I still was like, holy shit. But yeah, Ultimate Alliance is a bit of a fever dream of a roster. Not to mention the repackaged versions, which for the PS3 and 360 that then became available to buy on PS4 and Xbox One, contained Magneto, Hawkeye, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Sabretooth, Venom, and the main man, Doctor Doom. Obviously, Ultimate Alliance 3, all these years later, has a ton more characters, but this was for the time when Marvel wasn't this huge juggernaut. Seeing and meeting all these characters was just so much fun. And this is where the game really shines, because it does a really great job of either, if you're new, introducing you to the relationships and the dynamics of these characters, or if you know it all, upholding all of that which you do. So what's really cool is, say I'm doing a mission as Cyclops. He meets Jean Grey in this mission. They have unique dialogue other than just some text-based dialogue that Isaiah has, like Spider-Man. But then let's say I am Spider-Man and then I'm fighting Scorpion or Shocker. There's unique dialogue for that scene. If there's no dynamic there, your character will just have some text, which then the villain will respond to. but it just feels personal. Going back to the Cyclops analogy, there's a moment where she's being mind controlled, but you manage to save her, and Cyclops gets a quite emotional speech, which, say I'm playing as Venom, I wouldn't get that. So whilst it's neat and personal, it's also, you're missing out if you're rocking a different kind of team. And speaking of the team, you can have 4 characters in your squad. These can be synergized too, so like a 15% bonus for being all X-Men or Fantastic Four, which is cool, but let's be real, it's the experimentation that you come to this game for. Cyclops with Spider-Man and Doctor Doom and Human Torch, unlikely mashups that just work. It's like buying toys as a kid and just mashing them together and making your own team-ups and stories. Like I said at the top, the Ultimate Alliance games are one of your only games where you can get that X-Men fix. Comboing Cyclops' beam with Doom's lightning and then getting a combo is still very satisfying nearly 18 years after release. The game does hold up in the gameplay department. It's a little stiff, sure, and it would be in the sequel where you perform actual team-up moves, but even the special attacks where everyone performs at the same time does feel powerful, and the game does a terrific job of that superhero power fantasy. Not to mention, it can be pretty challenging as well at times. There's a lot of diversity in Ultimate Alliance. Spider-Man can be projectile focused or melee, Cyclops can charge up his beam or defend his teammates, Human Torch can buff his teammates with fire damage, Storm can be a bit of a glass cannon. Truth is, there's actually a bit of an RPG here, but in multiple ways. You can spend your skill points or coins in selecting what abilities from the ones that you've unlocked you want to upgrade and spec into. You have to make a choice of which 3 abilities alongside your ultimate you want to use. The second part of the RPG is that throughout the game, whether you realise it or not, you're actually making decisions or completing / not completing objectives that will have a bearing on your ending to a degree. Huge things actually, like the health and the welfare and future of mutants, the relationships with the Skrulls, what happens to Charles Xavier after the credits. The game presents you with difficult decisions at times too, like the main one that I think everyone remembers is having to choose whether you save Nightcrawler or Jean Grey, and both have their own repercussions. It's something that we don't get a lot of in superhero games now, and whilst in some cases that's fine, I kinda miss it a bit. It creates this journey-like behaviour that I feel only video games can really do. And speaking on that journey, it goes back to a point I made earlier. If you're new to Marvel, you're going to be introduced to the full spectrum of this universe. But if you're a fan, wow, there is a lot to dig into with this game. My lens as a child versus my lens now is chalk and cheese. Doom is the main protagonist, which, side note by the way, I'm sorry, I gotta go into this. Midnight Suns not performing well enough to get a sequel, which teased Doom in the post-credits scene, is an absolute travesty, mate. Anyway, he's the main man here, which is great because, like I say, Doom is lacking in video games and films right now. Such a terrific character. But it's not just Doom. You'll travel to the home of the Skrulls, you'll go through Asgard and Valhalla, Stark Tower, Atlantis, Murderworld, Sanctum Sanctorum, Mephisto's Realm. There's just so much here that will please the most die-hard of Marvel fans. With that comes a chunky roster of villains too. Ultron, Super Skrull, Scorpion, Rhino, Shocker, Mephisto, Bullseye. Ones that you will know, but also really obscure ones like Arcade too. Some have very unique mechanics from the others, so don't expect anything like cinematic battles that are going to make your jaw drop. But the quick time events, they show their age, but they're quite something to look at from the early 2000s. What's also really sick is some of these villains would have their own comic book missions too. So comic book missions work as part of a collectible. You pick up these discs in the missions, and then you play a mission solely as that character. But what's really sick is you can do these missions and there's ones for Shocker or Lizard or even Ultron. The comic book missions were a favourite of mine as a child, because this is where I got to know a lot about these characters and the backstories of them. Like Spider-Man questioning why he is Spider-Man at the start of a comic book mission and talking about his problems, and then by the end of it, realising the responsibility and the role he has to play as Spider-Man. These missions, they're not crazy unique, but they are different from each other, and you get to explore a bit of who each character is, and then be rewarded with a fun alternate suit and some points and skill points to spend at the end of it. Which also ties into, I think the scope of this game is pretty understated. You can get through the base campaign in like 10 to 12 hours, sure, but then there's like 20 to 25 of these comic book missions, a hard mode, a trivia game mode which is pretty fun, mission replay, and then New Game Plus. Oh, one of my favourite parts too, you can tell it's a 2000s game. This game is full to the brim of cheat codes too, like unlocking every character or all the outfits or gameplay buffs like unlimited health. Things that we don't get as much now. It's mad though because when you look at the timelines of these games, X-Men Legends was 2004, X-Men Legends 2, 2005. This was 2006, and then Ultimate Alliance 2 in 2009 a few years later. That's like the development pipeline of a single comic book video game nowadays. I really do think all these years later though, the charm of it is the scope of it. As I was punching my way through each level, just remembering the sheer amount of worlds that you visited, characters you could play as, and heroes and villains you'd met, a lot of superhero games do feel very contained in themselves now. And it works to the game's benefit here that it isn't. I look at Insomniac Spider-Man, right? Ever so slightly do I miss racing with the Human Torch or teaming up once with Wolverine. Not for them taking over the main plot, but I love it when it feels like a truly realised Marvel world. Something I wanted in the MCU post-Endgame was it to feel more connected, that a character could just show up for a 5-minute battle and then just dip, because they're both from New York and they don't have to spend a whole episode or 2 episodes there. And it never just quite clicked like that for the MCU. Here, you're taking on Galactus, bang, there's Silver Surfer. You're in Mephisto's realm, bang, here's Ghost Rider. It all just feels so connected, not to mention the alternate suits. All these years later, we've been spoiled by Rocksteady, Eidos, and even Team Ninja with their Ultimate Alliance take. But back then, seeing Symbiote Spidey or the vast array of Iron Man suits, Wolverine's various X-Men suits, it was amazing. It guided me towards some comics that I'd eventually go on to read and love and just really enjoy. And that's the beauty of Ultimate Alliance. No matter what your Marvel background is, there's something here for you. The X-Men, Fantastic Four, New York street level, the Avengers. It goes through so much, so fast, but it's to the game's benefit where it's this whirlwind of a comic book journey, like a Marvel's greatest hits. This game though, it needs to be preserved. It looks its age, sure, but it needs to be available for purchase again, and I really hope that Xbox, Activision and Marvel can work something out. I hope a port is in the works for Ultimate Alliance 3. I hope that somewhere a 4th is being made, because I think there'll always be room for this kind of Marvel game. And since playing this game again nearly 18 years later, it's still so much fun. So much comic book love and care. A terrific onboarding or a catering to the hardcore. With the roster at your hands that's playable, the characters that join the journey that you can speak and interact with, the masters of evil and doom that you have to take down. Marvel's Ultimate Alliance really was a love letter to Marvel's comic books. So, that was me reminiscing on Marvel's Ultimate Alliance. Man, so much fun. But now I want to hear from you in the comments. What are your memories of the first Ultimate Alliance game? Favourite characters to play as? Favourite boss fights? Alternate skins? Is the first Ultimate Alliance your favourite of the 3? Let's talk in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this and you'd like me to do another one of these based on the second Ultimate Alliance game, hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. If you are looking to stay up to date on all things comic books, Spider-Man, Marvel Rivals, Suicide Squad and a ton more, consider subscribing. Other than that, I hope that you have a terrific day, and I'll catch you in the next one.